Star Child. Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey ends with astronaut Dave Bowman transforming into the Star Child, a finale that secretly reframes the entire movie as an evolutionary leap story rather than a simple space mission. Released in 1968 and based on Arthur C. Clarke's work, the film concludes with Bowman aging rapidly in a neoclassical bedroom before becoming a luminous fetal figure floating in space. The black monolith appears at key evolutionary turning points throughout the narrative, first with the apes at the dawn of humanity, then on the moon, and finally orbiting Jupiter, implying an external force guiding human evolution across millennia. In the final sequence, Bowman passes through a psychedelic stargate, widely interpreted as a higher dimensional journey orchestrated by an unknown intelligence beyond human comprehension. Clarke's novelization and later comments frame the Star Child as a post-human being, with godlike awareness looking down on Earth, suggesting humanity's next step rather than Bowman's literal death. Critics often read the ending as humanity being judged worthy and reborn, with the Star Child representing both awe and potential danger for the future of the species. Kubrick deliberately refused to give a single official explanation, insisting that viewers draw their own conclusions, which helps cement the ending's mythic status. This ending is often cited as one of cinema's most misunderstood finales, but its deeper meaning is about guided evolution and humanity's transformation into something beyond human. It shows how sci-fi can use an abstract ending to explore big questions about where our species is headed. Blade Runner. Rick Deckard may be hunting his own kind. Blade Runner, released in 1982 and directed by Ridley Scott, follows Deckard as a Blade Runner tasked with retiring rogue replicants in a dystopian Los Angeles. The original theatrical cut ends with Deckard and Rachel escaping together into a relatively hopeful future, while later versions, including the director's cut from 1992 and the final cut from 2007, remove the happy road footage and add a crucial unicorn dream sequence. In the final cut, Deckard dreams of a unicorn running through a forest, and fellow Blade Runner Gaff leaves an origami unicorn outside his apartment, implying Gaff somehow knows Deckard's private dreams. Many critics argue this implies Deckard's memories are implants, just like other replicants, making him a replicant unknowingly hunting his own kind. Ridley Scott has publicly stated he sees Deckard as a replicant, while Harrison Ford has consistently favored the human interpretation, fueling decades of passionate debate among fans and scholars. The deeper meaning centers on how the line between human and artificial blurs throughout the story. The more empathy Deckard shows, particularly toward Rachel and the dying Roy Batty, the less it matters whether he's biologically real. The ending's hidden debate about Deckard's nature forces viewers to question whether empathy, memory, or biology defines humanity. It shows how a seemingly small visual detail, a paper unicorn, can completely change the way an ending is read and understood. Inception Top. Christopher Nolan's Inception ends with a spinning top that may never stop. Released in 2010, the film concludes with Cobb reuniting with his children after a dangerous mission into layered dreams, and he spins his totem, a small top, to test whether he's still dreaming. The film cuts to black before audiences see whether it falls or continues spinning indefinitely. Throughout the film, Cobb's top spins forever in dreams, but topples over in reality, making the ending an apparently simple question with a binary answer. However, Nolan has said in interviews that the key moment is Cobb walking away from the top to join his kids, suggesting he no longer obsesses over distinguishing dream from reality. The deeper thematic reading is that Cobb wakes up emotionally by letting go of guilt over his wife Mal's death, making internal healing more important than objective proof of what's real. Some critics argue the unresolved top reinforces the film's central question about whether our experience and emotional truth matter more than any absolute reality. No one has deliberately refused to definitively answer whether Cobb is dreaming, preserving multiple valid readings and interpretations. This is one of the most famous modern ambiguous endings, often misread as a simple puzzle when it actually reflects Cobb's psychological growth and the theme of choosing personal meaning over certainty. It shows how ambiguity can serve character development and thematic depth, not just shock value or audience manipulation. Arrival choice. Louise Banks sees her daughter's entire life before it begins. Arrival, directed by Denis Villeneuve and released in 2016, follows linguist Louise Banks as she learns the circular written language of alien visitors called heptapods. By the film's conclusion, audiences discover the heptapods experience time non-linearly, and learning their language rewires Louise's perception so she sees past, present, and future simultaneously rather than sequentially. The memories of her daughter Hannah's illness and death that appear throughout the film are actually future events, not past ones. meaning Louise hasn't had the child yet when the story begins. Once Louise fully understands the language, she can act on future knowledge, demonstrated when she calls China's General Shang and repeats his wife's dying words, which he will share with her in the future, to prevent an international conflict. The hidden emotional meaning is that Louise knowingly chooses a life that includes immense joy and inevitable loss, deciding to raise her daughter Hannah despite knowing she will die young from an incurable disease. The film reframes time travel-style foreknowledge as a meditation on accepting suffering as an inseparable part of a meaningful life. Arrival's ending uses sci-fi time perception to pose a deeply personal question. If you could see your future heartbreak with perfect clarity, would you still choose to live it? It turns a first contact story into a quiet, devastating meditation on agency, love, and the value of experiences we know will hurt us. Looper, Sacrifice. Young Joe shoots himself to save a child. Looper, written and directed by Rian Johnson and released in 2012, stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as young Joe and Bruce Willis as his older self, a hitman who kills future targets sent back in time by criminal organizations. The Rainmaker, a terrifying future crime lord closing all the time loops, is implied to be a traumatized child named Sid, whom old Joe plans to kill in the present to prevent that dark future from ever occurring. In the climactic confrontation on a farm, young Joe realizes that old Joe's attempt to shoot young Sid will traumatize him into becoming the very monster they fear, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of violence and revenge. Young Joe turns his weapon on himself and pulls the trigger, erasing old Joe from existence instantly and stopping the attack, effectively breaking the loop of revenge-driven violence. Johnson has stated the ending is meant as an emotional resolution, rather than a perfectly logical time travel diagram, prioritizing character choice and moral reckoning over scientific consistency. The hidden meaning is that real change comes from refusing to repeat inherited harm, even at tremendous personal cost and the sacrifice of your own future. Looper uses sci-fi time travel rules as a backdrop for a moral parable about taking responsibility in the present to prevent future horror. It shows how time travel in cinema can highlight social and emotional loops, cycles of trauma and violence, not just paradox puzzles and clever plot mechanics. Annihilation Shimmer. Lena and Kane return changed at a molecular level. Annihilation, directed by Alex Garland and released in 2018, follows biologist Lena into the Shimmer, a quarantined zone where DNA and reality are distorted by an alien presence. In the finale, Lena confronts a shape-shifting doppelganger in a lighthouse that mimics her every movement before apparently dying in a fire she sets. She returns to the military facility and reunites with Kane, who is revealed to be a copy created inside the Shimmer's reality warping field, not the original. The last shot reveals iridescent shimmer-like patterns flickering in both Lena's and Kane's eyes, implying they carry the alien presence within them permanently. Critics widely interpret the Shimmer as a metaphor for illness, grief, and self-destructive tendencies that rewrite a person from the inside, transforming their fundamental nature. The ending's hidden meaning is that survival doesn't mean going back to how you were before trauma. Experiences, especially devastating ones, change your identity at a fundamental level, and you can never truly return to who you were. Annihilation turns a body horror finale into a quiet statement about how people come back from psychological damage different and altered, even if they appear the same on the surface. It uses a sci-fi infection to dramatize the idea that change, particularly through suffering, is both terrifying and inevitable for anyone who faces extreme circumstances. Solaris Reality. Chris Kelvin chooses an illusion over painful truth. Steven Soderbergh's Solaris, released in 2002, follows psychologist Chris Kelvin to a space station orbiting the planet Solaris, where visitors appear as physical manifestations of crew members' memories and deepest regrets. The ending reveals Kelvin did not truly return to Earth as audiences might assume. A flashback shows he chose to stay with the recreated version of his deceased wife Rhea aboard the doomed station, rather than escape to genuine reality. The deeper meaning centers on grief and the powerful temptation to embrace an idealized illusion instead of moving forward from devastating loss. Solaris suggests that in sci-fi, the most frightening alien force can be our own unwillingness to let go of what we've lost, even if it means living inside a beautiful lie for whatever time remains. The ending forces us to ask whether a comforting falsehood is preferable to an unbearable truth. By the way, if you're enjoying what you're watching, I make content like this regularly. Subscribing would really help me out. Coherence Swap. Emily steals another version of her life. Coherence, released in 2013, is set during a dinner party disrupted by a comet passing overhead, which causes overlapping realities to collide on the same suburban street. As the night escalates into paranoia and violence, Emily discovers multiple versions of herself and her friends existing simultaneously, each from slightly different branches of reality with small variations. Near the end, she finds a version of the house where the relationships seem better and her life appears happier, so she knocks out that reality's Emily and attempts to replace her permanently. In the morning, the original Emily's body has vanished, and a phone call from another Emily leaves the stolen life already showing cracks and instability. The hidden meaning revolves around self-image, envy, and dissatisfaction. Emily literally tries to escape her own mistakes and unhappiness by hijacking a timeline where she likes herself more, and her choices seem superior. The final ambiguous look from her boyfriend suggests that reality and Emily's desperate lie may be unraveling around her. Coherence uses multiverse mechanics not to explain physics or explore science, but to show how easily we justify abandoning responsibility and our authentic selves if we believe there's a better version of our life somewhere else. The uncertainty mirrors Emily's unstable sense of identity. Primer fracture. Aaron and Abe lose themselves in time loops. Primer, directed by Shane Carruth and released in 2004, follows two engineers, Aaron and Abe, who accidentally invent a time machine capable of looping back a few hours at most. As they exploit the device for financial gain and personal manipulation, multiple versions of each man begin to exist simultaneously, secretly looping events and creating an impossibly tangled timeline. By the ending, one Aaron is heard on a recording warning another Aaron about what will happen, while a separate Abe tries to monitor or potentially sabotage future time travel attempts. The film concludes with one version apparently leaving to build a massive warehouse-sized machine elsewhere, implying the destructive cycle will escalate on a much larger scale. The hidden meaning is about how power and paranoia corrode trust and identity. The men lose their friendship and any stable sense of who is the original version and who is a copy or future iteration. Primer shows how a grounded sci-fi premise can become existential horror, suggesting that the real cost of time travel is the complete loss of a coherent self and the relationships that define us. Even dedicated fans use detailed diagrams to track this ending's complexity. eXistenZ layers. Allegra and Ted cannot escape the game. David Cronenberg's eXistenZ, released in 1999, follows game designer Allegra Geller and marketing trainee Ted Pickle as they test a new organic virtual reality game that blurs the line between simulation and reality through biological interfaces. By the finale, they appear to have escaped a violent scenario and returned to safety, only for the film to reveal they were inside another game layer the entire time, never having truly logged out. The last moments leave them genuinely unsure whether they're finally in base reality or still trapped in yet another nested simulation, with no way to verify which level is real. The ending suggests that once you've questioned reality enough times, doubt becomes permanent and inescapable. This is a distinctly sci-fi anxiety about technology rewriting what feels authentic and real. The hidden meaning underscores media immersion, paranoia, and the idea that entertainment and virtual experiences can become indistinguishable from life itself, leaving us perpetually uncertain about our own existence. Donnie Darko. Donnie sacrifices himself to reset the universe. Donnie Darko, written and directed by Richard Kelly and released in 2001, centers on Donnie, a troubled teenager who sees a figure in a rabbit suit named Frank and narrowly survives a jet engine mysteriously crashing into his bedroom. Over the film, Donnie's visions and a fictional book called The Philosophy of Time Travel hint that he's living in a tangent universe created when the engine went off course, an unstable timeline that will eventually collapse. The climax shows Donnie laughing in bed as the engine falls and kills him this time, seemingly restoring the primary universe and erasing the tangent timeline's events, including deaths and disasters we witnessed. Characters like Gretchen and Donnie's mother appear to sense residual déjà vu in the restored timeline, implying some emotional echo of what happened remains in their subconscious. Fan and critical readings suggest Donnie consciously chooses to die to prevent larger catastrophes we saw in the tangent universe, giving the ending a hidden self-sacrifice meaning, where one life resets a doomed world. Kelly's director's cut and supplemental materials lean heavily into the time manipulation explanation, with additional scenes and text, but the original theatrical cut leaves substantial room for psychological interpretations about mental illness and perception. Donnie Darko turns a surreal teen sci-fi story into a tragic, hidden hero narrative, where the confusing ending is actually about whether a single troubled life can have cosmic significance. The Thing. MacReady and Childs share a drink in permanent doubt. John Carpenter's The Thing, released in 1982, ends with MacReady and Childs sitting alone at the destroyed Antarctic research base, both exhausted and freezing, while the shape-shifting alien's survival remains completely uncertain. They share a bottle and accept they'll likely freeze to death before any rescue arrives, and the film never confirms whether either man is still human or has been replaced by the creature. The hidden meaning emphasizes that paranoia cannot be neatly resolved or put to rest. In some situations, there is simply no test that gives comforting certainty about who to trust or what is real. The ending forces viewers to sit with permanent doubt and suspicion, echoing Cold War anxieties about invisible threats and the impossibility of absolute trust when anyone could be the enemy. Carpenter deliberately leaves this unresolved to maximize psychological horror rather than providing closure. 13th Floor. Douglas Hall escapes into a higher reality. The 13th Floor, released in 1999, follows Douglas Hall, who helps run a 1930s-style simulated world accessible via full-immersion virtual reality technology. Hall gradually discovers that his own contemporary 1990s reality is also a simulation controlled by users from a more technologically advanced world above his own. In the finale, Hall's consciousness is uploaded into his real counterpart in the higher-level world after a violent struggle involving murder and identity theft across simulation layers. The hidden meaning is that the quest for what's objectively real never ends. If reality is infinitely stackable and layered, what actually matters is who has control and agency, and who is treated as disposable code rather than a conscious being. The film pairs with other simulation stories by suggesting free might be an illusion, under the control of unseen manipulators operating from levels we cannot perceive. This ending recontextualizes every earlier scene as happening inside a controlled sandbox, turning a murder mystery into a commentary on class, control, power, and the ethics of creating simulated lives that can suffer. If you found this valuable, subscribe so you never miss new content. Thanks for watching.